everybody. It's the Cryptid Huntress. I'm Jessica Jones, and welcome into tonight's remote viewing show. My gosh, I think we've bitten off more than I can chew tonight with this one, because I have remote viewed the Battle of Los Angeles. Okay, I've actually done two targets because I actually remote viewed something else as well. I did this a while back, but I did get a request. Y'all remember I asked for some remote viewing target requests. And I had Haley Hampton, who watches this show. She sent me an email saying, please remote view the Battle of Los Angeles. Well, it just so happened that I had already remote viewed that. And so I dug it out of the archives. We're going to do this one tonight. And I also have another one. We're probably going to get to this one too. But it is let me see if I can find it. It was the Celestial. Y'all, I ran out of ink, by the way. I ran out of ink. So I can't find it. It's the celestial phenomenon of 1561. Okay. And that's out of Nuremberg. I believe that's Germany, right? I'm not sure. I think it's Germany. I don't know. But anyways, that was another one of my targets as well. And so it's the aerial celestial phenomenon of Nuremberg. Okay. 1561. There may be some connections here. We're actually going to make some connections with Roswell. We're going to make some connections with, oh man, Antarctica and the Germans and all the stuff they had going on, because y'all know this did happen during World War II. Okay. And the data is pretty wild. The data is really wild on this one. Okay, y'all. So if you would like to follow along with all of my shows, please go to my website. That's thecryptidhuntress.com. You can find all of my shows there. And if you'd like to join my Patreon, I have all of the remote viewing data posted there tonight under this. I actually have a video posted as well. It should be streaming live right now through Patreon. So yeah, thank you guys so much for all of your support. But that's where you can find all of my data for these targets. Okay, and also I do have a shop that's called War Woman Goods. If you guys would like to go check out the goods over there. Okay, and I do send free merch with purchase on all of my purchases there. Okay, y'all. Well, let's get to the show tonight because I have Dr. Dennis Carroll here in the studio, and he and I have both been doing a lot of research today and really digging deep into this topic. Okay, so let's get this party started, y'all. Okay, and like I said, I did run out of ink, so I'm going to be going back and forth through my computer. So please bear with me tonight. Okay. All right, let me go back up. All right, so on February the 25th, 1942, 2 days after Japanese submarines surfaced and shot 16 shells at an oil field 12 miles west of Santa Barbara, California, radar stations picked up an unidentified object over Santa Monica Bay at 2:25 a.m. The region's anti-aircraft batteries, the largest at Fort MacArthur, went fully into action, blindly firing 1,500 rounds into the suddenly search-lighted skies. Of course, there's a whole lot of missing information, kind of. It's all up in the air. What actually happened that night? It's kind of, nobody really knows for sure. Okay, and you gotta remember this is during World War II, and just not too long before this, Pearl Harbor had been attacked by the Japanese. Okay, so the country was on edge. Okay, it was absolutely on edge. We're gonna get into this. We're gonna talk about this a little bit more as soon as I get Dennis up here tonight. But they were on edge. Something was in the sky. Okay, something was in the sky with searchlights on it. It did look like a UFO. Okay, it looked like a UFO. I'm going to go ahead and bring Dennis up here so we can really get into this conversation. Dennis has many, many years of experience with the paranormal. He's an investigator, an author. He's a researcher, and my resident expert on the occult, cryptids and UFOs, actually. So please help me welcome to the show tonight my good friend, Dr. Dennis Carroll. Hey, Dennis.
Good evening. Good to be here. This is a very fascinating subject we're going to be talking about tonight, the Battle of L.A. It's got a lot of connections to it, absolutely.
It does. It does. And this is something that, so I was asked to remote view this by one of our viewers, Haley. And I had already remote viewed it, and so I figured, well, let's just do this one tonight, because I was seeing a whole lot of connections with this target and another target that I had done, and a bunch of other targets that I've done. I feel like we can make some connections tonight, Dennis, with this Battle of Los Angeles. And I think it's important that we kind of go over a little bit of the history of some of the things that had happened during World War II tonight, if that's cool with you.
Yeah. Well, at that very same time, well, I think this was like, just a few days out, or just maybe a month or so after Pearl Harbor. The country had the war jitters very badly. I mean, it wouldn't take much to set them off, absolutely. And I think a few days before this happened, a Japanese sub actually shelled the coastal part, I think up above Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
It was I think an oil refinery or a gasoline refinery, something like that. It didn't do very much damage. And it happened, as a matter of fact, at the very same time that President Roosevelt was doing one of his fireside chat things. And they sort of did this deliberately as an affront to him, I think. It was more propaganda than it was a war action in some ways. But that is the very climate that you had, Jessica, at that time. And when we say war jitters, we mean everybody was on edge. All of this was in the newspapers. All of this was on people's minds. And the mindset was there for anything like this to happen, especially something very dramatic. And it wouldn't have taken very much to set this off, without a doubt.
Exactly.
And that's what you see what happened with the Battle of Los Angeles, I think. But here's the interesting thing about it all. When you get deep into it, you begin to see the remnants of what may be a cover up thing going on here. And why was there a need to be a cover up? Because they came out and said, oh, it was, in case of mistaken identity. They were just shooting at the clouds and all this stuff. But there were actual reports of people seeing something up in the sky. And then, of course, later on, they come up with the old standard standby weather balloon thing. Okay, we've heard that before, haven't we? And that
Yeah.
is a direct connection to Roswell in a way. Um, they said, "Oh, it was a weather balloon." And here's my question on that, Jessica. Right in the middle of war, with all that stuff going on, why in the world would you send up weather balloons? That just doesn't make sense. You know what I'm saying? That is kind of a stupid thing to do, especially with everybody on edge and all. That does, this has all the earmarks in many ways of some kind of cover up going on. And at the very same time that this happened in the newspapers, there were reporters saying that very same thing. There's a cover up going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we heard about weather balloons during the
Mm-hmm.
very famous Roswell UFO crash. Okay, that was said to have been a weather balloon too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So this turned, and about 2 or 3 years ago, we had a weather balloon shot down over off the coast of South Carolina too, here. So, and the same day we had a UFO report. Okay, UFO
Mm-hmm.
reports, UFOs getting shot down over the Great Lakes, right?
Well,
So,
this is beginning. All of this is the beginning of the UFO age. Okay, it began here with the Battle of Los Angeles, and it wasn't that many years later that Kenneth Arnold saw those flying discs, and then Roswell came along. This is the beginning of it all, and I call the early UFO age goes from 1942 unto the mid 60s. Was the golden age of it, you might say. But this is where it began. But here's a really strange thing about that Roswell picture. I always think about that when I see it. That looks more like the remnants of a kite than a weather balloon. I mean, that looks more like somebody's big kite or something. That's very strange looking. But it has all the, like I said, the earmarks of cover up, and you got to ask the question why. What are they covering up? What are they being so quiet about? There were reports, and I know you'll be talking about this. There were reports of a triangular craft that was supposedly seen over Los Angeles. There are other reports of things that were seen that night that really can't be discounted in some ways. And here's the strange thing about that triangular craft, and I have my own history with that. I saw one myself very close up a few years back, and it was otherworldly looking. It was huge, football field size, huge, eerily quiet. The one I saw didn't have any running lights. It was daylight. But anyway, this thing pops up again in the very famous Nuremberg sightings. This same craft, and you're talking about something going back to the Middle Ages. What's going on here, and why is this popping up like that? Somebody, I think, actually saw something like that. They had to have that adequate of a description of something. You just don't make something up off the top of your head like that. And that's very interesting, and another strange connection.
That's true. That's true. Now I want to be sure that we set the tone, and then we kind of, I want to give, I don't want to say a thorough history of what happened leading up to this with during the war. Okay, but I already have some pictures uploaded. I might as well show them. Okay, so let's talk about Pearl Harbor briefly. Okay, because so this was, hold on. Oh my gosh, I lost my place here because I don't have my stuff printed out. Okay, so on December 7th, 1941, the first of two waves of Japanese aircraft launched from 6 aircraft carriers, and they attacked Pearl Harbor. Okay, this was in 1941. Now we're talking about what year was this? Yeah, 1941, and so 2,400 U.S. sailors were killed, and over 1,200 were wounded. Well over half of the military aircraft were damaged or destroyed, almost all on the ground. Okay, this was a surprise attack. The United States, apparently, we were not expecting this to happen, but it did. It did happen nonetheless. Okay, so let me take that down. And so it did happen. So that's why the world was so, or the United States was so on edge. Because
I had an uncle stationed there when it happened, and he told me that many years ago that the Japanese didn't really realize they could have just come on over and extended that. We would have been unprepared for it here on the mainland, much less Hawaii. They didn't really understand at what a sort of a clutch they had us in. If they had extended their war on out at that time, it would have been horrendous. There would have been a bigger loss of life. And there were rumors at that time, Jessica, during the Battle of LA, that there was a supposed Japanese aircraft carrier off the, out somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, not that far from California. That was a rumor, but I wonder if it was true. And that might have been part of what they were covering up. They didn't want the public to know that we were that close to being attacked on the mainland. That's a possibility.
It could be. Well, I mean, I feel like we're kind of I'm not going to say we're in a similar predicament right now, but there's rumors that there are, Russian submarines and all sorts of aircraft carriers off the coast of Florida right now, or there were last week. I haven't heard any news on it really. There was, some people had sent me some stuff about it. So it feels like we're inching closer and closer to another possible world war at some point. I hope not. I'm not going to put it out there, not in my reality. Okay. I don't want to have another world war, and so.
The next one, if we have a next one, it will be devastating. Absolutely. And there will be nuclear weapons used. Now, what we call short range nuclear weapons, more like smaller nuclear weapons, but still as effective as the one like we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But we back in the early '60s, there was that crisis with the Cuban Missile Crisis. We may see a repeat there. There's a strange thing about history, Jessica. It tends to repeat itself sometimes. And when I heard about those ships docking the other day in Havana, I thought, oh, this sounds like the Bay of Pigs thing all over again. That's not good. And I worry about the fact that we stepped up. John F. Kennedy stepped up to the point that day and made them back down. But I wonder if that would happen again, if we get that lucky again. in that situation.
Mm.
But Putin is flexing his muscles for a reason. He is trying to psych us out, I think, in some ways. But I would not put it past this guy to use short range nuclear weapons eventually, if he's that determined to do things. So that's the atmosphere you got in the world today, and you can kind of correlate that with what was going on back then, and the jittery kind of a thing. This was before, of course, any such thing as a Cold War, which we came out of, and I know you remember that, a little bit of that. Um, where actually seems to me like it's being reborn again, the Cold War, in that respect. So we may have a correlation to those times once again in
Yes.
this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's no coincidences. Okay, I don't think there are any coincidences. For whatever reason, we're doing this show today. Of course, Haley was the inspiration. So shout out to Haley for recommending this one. But that's why we're talking about it tonight. Okay, so the U.S. Was attacked, and it was a totally unprovoked attack by Japan.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and it basically forced the United States to declare war on Japan, thus bringing us into World War II. Okay, they forced the hand. Okay, and I understand why. Okay, so that's why the United States is on edge, especially over there on the West Coast, because the island of one of the islands in Hawaii had just been attacked. Okay, so they were on alert, and then on February the 25th of 1942, the next year, this happened. Okay, this happens, and so the threat of the invasion by Japan seemed imminent. Okay, and the California coast was put on a yellow alert, is what they called it, and they were watching for more attacks. That was after Santa Monica basically had, I guess they picked up on a UFO at some point that day. Okay, that night around 2:25 a.m. that early that morning, they picked up on an unidentified flying object on several different radars. Okay, and so the naval intelligence warned that the attack is imminent. Something was about to happen, and so the alert sometime was taken down to white. They were still on high alert, but the alert was put down to white, is what it said. And then at 1:44, 3 separate radars picked up a UFO approaching Los Angeles. By 2 a.m., it was 200 kilometers. Yes, kilometers. We measure by miles over here in the U.S., but it's kilometers offshore, and an anti-aircraft battery or batteries, several of them were put on green alert. That meant it's ready to go. I thought it was red alert, but it said green alert on here. The gunners prepared for the city to be raided. Okay, 20 minutes later, the UFO was tracked within 5 kilometers of the city, and an alarm was sounded. LA was blacked out. They had a complete blackout. Now, when I think of those today, I think that, I think it's because it's on purpose. Maybe the
Yeah.
city government put it on blackout so they wouldn't know exactly where to hit it. Okay. But LA nonetheless was blacked out. The UFO vanished from the radar and it never reappeared, but visual sightings of any enemy aircrafts flooded information centers. Okay, so around 3:07 a.m., artillery stations were given the orders to open fire. The skies erupted like a volcano. Firing became erratic because the targets were spotted all over the city. So this was not just like one big triangular craft or whatever they were saying, or just one airplane. They were all over the city, according to some people, a lot of the eyewitnesses. From one lone enemy fighter to fleets of fighters and bombers is what was reported. But some witnesses said they didn't see anything. They didn't hear anything or see anything. Some said they saw balloons. Others said they saw blimps. And others said they saw birds. So there were all sorts of different reports, which was odd, right, Dennis? It seems like everybody would have kind of seen the same thing. But this lasted until 4 a.m. The firing of the guns, people shooting, the soldiers shooting into the air, it lasted until 4 a.m.
Well, there was a lot of chaos that night too, especially a lot of the shells that fell did some damage. There were 3 automobile accidents where whose lives were taken in those accidents. 2 people that had heart attacks because of the stress of the situation of what was going on. So you had casualties from this, okay? Absolutely. And here's an interesting thing, and there are rumors, and we're gonna get into some rabbit holes here. There are rumors that what was actually sighted that night was not Japanese or even alien in that respect. It was more, they think, or there are some rumors that it could have been a German aircraft, special type of a German aircraft that sort of, shall we say, tested the defenses of the West Coast to see what would happen. There's a rumor that it might have been a Nazi infiltration type thing, and there
Oh,
were we do know the Nazis were working on a lot of very interesting experimental aircraft. We're gonna get into that in a little
oh,
while, but
really?
that's an interesting rumor too, a connection
Okay,
for
so
that as well.
that's interesting because you have not seen my data. Okay, this was a blind target, a blind remote viewing target, and my data is very interesting because it does involve Germans and potentially,
Uh,
I guess I can say it on air. Let's just say Nazis. Okay, Nazi Germany. There's certain words you're not supposed to say on YouTube. I don't know. I don't even know what those words are anymore. I'm just gonna say whatever I'm gonna say.
uh,
Okay. Um,
yep,
so yeah, this is an interesting one, Dennis, and it's so cool that you brought that up because I think that could be the case according to this remote viewing data. Okay.
that's
Um,
interesting, very interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Uh,
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, the diaglock that JJ is talking about there, or we always call the Nazi bell. It was kind of bell-shaped craft, supposedly. There are rumors that, according to the fact that they used the real technology, that thing right there was anti-gravity. And if you look at the rendition of this, look at the strange writing around there. And I've had a lot of people ask me, what does that mean? Well, that could be occultic type markings. Now, I'm not sure if this is an actual photograph or a mock up of it, but those markings could represent what we would call occult markings. Now, we do know that the Nazis in wartime Germany were very interested in vril. We've talked about that on some of your earlier shows that we've done together. The vril was a very interesting thing, and it is also known as the paranormal science. Um, so you got a lot of weird connections here, Jessica. And according to a lot of rumors, that what was seen that night might have been the Nazi veil that was seen over
Oh,
Los Angeles. And here's one more thing: you got to remember, back in the early days of World War II, radar was in its infancy. It's not that far fetched that something like that could not have went all the way across the U.S. undetected
no.
to show up over Los Angeles. It's not that
What?
far fetched, or it could have come from South America, anywhere back
Oh,
over in there, or even the Pacific. We do know, without a doubt, that the Japanese and the Nazis were hand in hand on a lot of this stuff. They were allies,
oh
so that
yeah.
gives you something else to go on. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, just to kind of backtrack just a tiny bit, the next morning, the actual newspaper, the Times, wrote an article about what happened. I mean, this was such a huge deal. Obviously, the power had gone out. They had a blackout. There was shooting. There was firing all night. Oh, not all night, but for at least a good hour or more. They had all the spotlights on this one thing out
Mm.
here. Let's see. Let me go back.
That was, and they shot thousands of rounds of
Yeah,
ammunition, thousands of rounds at that.
they
Here's
did.
my, here's the one thing. I wasn't there that night, and I can't say for sure, but let me say this: I just don't see the reasoning behind thousands of rounds of ammunition at just blank air.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I got to believe there was some kind of target there, whatever it was.
Oh yeah. There was something
Yeah.
there. I mean, that you can see it in the pictures. I have a couple of different pictures with different one of them's darker than the other, so you can kind of it almost looks like there's a craft right there. It does
Uh-huh.
look like a craft of some sort, okay, that they have all the lights shined on right there. And the different what do you call it? Like filters that you put it through, I guess. I mean, there's something there. I mean, why else would they all have their spotlights in that one spot, Dennis? There's obviously something there. Okay.
I
100%.
have had, I've heard people say I was Foo Fighters. Now Foo Fighters are my favorite World War II UFOs. Okay, but Foo Fighters were mainly just like globes of light that followed very fast around ships. This was more than that. This was a more substantial object or target, I think, than Foo Fighters. Okay, I think there was something more to it than that, and I have a feeling that a lot of the rumors about the Nazi paranormal science that was going on at that time had something to do with this. There's a lot of conjecture on the fact that when the war ended with Operation Paperclip, that we brought a lot of their scientists over here. One of them was Werner von Braun, of course, the father of modern rocketry. I've seen pictures of him in his Gestapo uniform, by the way. Um, he was one of the scientists we brought over here. Now, this is one of the guys that took us to the moon. Okay. Operation Paperclip also encompassed what would eventually become Operation Stargate, the remote viewing and all that went on. That was also part of the Nazi paranormal science. Okay. We had nothing like that at that time, as far as I know, as far as it's been revealed, that we had nothing like that at the time until Operation Paperclip went into effect. We brought a lot of stuff over from Nazi Germany. They were highly advanced in a lot of things they were doing. The V-2 rockets, the flying wing. That flying wing looks like something out of Buck Rogers or something. That was way out there. And you're talking about some highly advanced stuff, a lot more than the Allies had. Absolutely. Look at that. That looks like something that was fly out of the 23rd century or something.
It does. Well, they actually called that, it wasn't just
Yeah.
an airplane, they called it a spacecraft. Okay, so that's actually what they called a spacecraft. This was, yeah, it's called the air wing, right? I think that's what they called that. So super,
Yeah.
super interesting. It looks like a stealth bomber kind of to me. So something that I
That's
don't
what
think is detectable on radar.
that's where
Okay.
a lot of your stealth bomber technology comes from, I do believe.
Yeah.
And talking about rumors, there were also rumors that the Nazis had secret air bases in South America. Now, what makes me wonder more about this being a rumor than just a rumor? Where did all the Nazis flee to after World War II? They all went
Argentina.
where? South
Argentina.
America. They
Yeah.
went to South America. That was
Somewhere.
it. And I believe they already had several installations there, And then, of course, supposedly when things got bad there, they went from there to the Antarctic, supposedly, to
Okay.
establish bases.
Oh man.
And the Diglot was supposed to be, the Veil was supposed to be one of the ships they used to transport stuff and all that thing. It was supposed to have anti-gravity. In other words, it didn't use a jet engine like we know what jet engines are. It used an anti-gravity type of a magnetic engine, supposedly.
Right.
That's interesting. Um, Here's one more thing. They said if this thing could possibly have had some kind of magnetic energy about it, it could have been possibly like we have talked about in the past about the Philadelphia experiment. That they may have cloaked themselves against the radar. They might not have completely disappeared, you understand, from sight, but they may have disappeared to radar. And like I said, radar was in its early infancy at that time. It's not like fully developed like it is nowadays. We can track weather balloons nowadays. We know that. But hey, look, just what happened not recently. One went over us that we didn't even know anything about. So it's not that far fetched that they couldn't have done that. So I have a distinct feeling that Germany somehow was connected with the Battle of LA.
Yeah, we're going to get into the data in just a second, but I wanted to let the audience know, in case you're not familiar with this case, the Japanese denied that their warplanes ever flew over Los Angeles. Official U.S. wartime records are inconclusive, and although some residents claimed they had seen a globular, like a like an orb or something, or triangular craft in the sky. Military officials blamed the whole thing on jittery nerves and a meteorological balloon. No bombs were dropped or shots were fired from the air. So whatever this was didn't fight back. Okay, it didn't fight back. It didn't shoot anybody. It was all the U.S. military, U.S. Navy, and whoever was shooting at it.
Yeah, here's something else. Here's something else to think about, Jessica. Up until this time, nobody hardly ever spoke the word cover up. And all of a sudden, this pops up from out of nowhere. And I have to wonder about that too. Okay. The timing of that is suspicious as well. I think some people knew some things, definitely, that they weren't letting out.
Well, also, we have to remember that, like the 1940s and the 1950s, Los Angeles was a hotbed of UFO sightings. Okay, so it's not shocking, okay, that that this happened during this time period, and people do assume that it could have been UFOs. Now, in 1945, there were some documents that were declassified. Declassified documents. It said the barrage commenced after balloons like weather balloons with a red flare were spotted over Santa Monica. Artillery gunners opened fire on the balloons, airships, and airplanes. One airplane was set on fire. Now, this is all in this declassified document. It's been, they said it's been definitely ascertained that the blackout and anti-aircraft firing were caused because 1 to 5 airplanes had been launched from Japanese submarines. I didn't know you could launch an airplane from a submarine. That's weird. But Japanese involvement was ruled out. So that's weird too, right, Dennis? Japanese involvement was ruled out. Japan said they never sent any planes there that night, and that they probably came from the United States, is what Japan said. In 1948, it was determined that weather balloons were blamed. Weather balloons.
There's the old standard, yeah.
Yeah, that just doesn't make sense.
And then, like I said, you begin to hear about cover-ups in the newspapers and all that. I have to wonder, back in those days, Jessica, you had very, very good investigative reporters, and not like they are nowadays. You had people that really knew their stuff. You had people even like Dorothy Kilgallen and other people like that. They knew how to investigate this stuff. And that's what makes me very suspicious. When that word cover-up got bounced around by several of the newspapers at that time, the media. Now, you got to remember, newspaper was the big thing. You didn't have TV much then. You had radio, but you didn't have TV that much. You had more, newspaper was a bigger thing back then. And the newspaper reporters start saying cover up. I have to wonder about that, what was really going on in the Battle of LA. We may never know. We may never really truly find out, but I think it was more to it than than a weather balloon. Absolutely.
It was. All right, well, let's get into the data that I have for this target, which was the Battle of Los Angeles. What were those people shooting at? Okay, what were they shooting at? It was actually the entire incident. Okay, and I have a little bit of data on this, and I think it is really interesting. Okay, so for some of my sensory data, I was picking up something that was floating, busted, hitting, hot, upward strikes, which makes sense. Lucid, flying, hovering, and explosive. That was some of my sensory data. Now, I actually heard fire in the hole when I was remote viewing this. I picked up on the Marines or Marine. I wrote targeted. I heard X marks the spot. I was definitely near the ocean when I was remote viewing whatever this was. And I picked up on bombs. I thought something was exploding, so I was picking up on what I thought were bombs. But Dennis, I actually wrote the word balloon down. I wrote balloon, which is odd, right? Because we're like, well, it couldn't have been balloons, but it's part of my data. Okay. But I also wrote down, I got a bunch of data that had to do with something being staged. Okay. Staged in a ploy, like a ploy. Okay. I also got, I was seeing something that was very dangerous. I wrote action movie or action packed. Okay. And then I was picking up on something that was like a movie. I thought I was watching a movie, and I actually wrote down the War of the Worlds. Okay, the War of the Worlds. Now, you're familiar with that, right, Dennis?
Uh-huh.
The War of the Worlds. Okay, so, and we're going to get into the War of the Worlds in just a second, okay? Because I want to finish the data and then we'll go back to it, because I think this is very important. Okay, so I was getting a very nervous energy about this target. I heard skin in the game, and then I wrote down Nazi Germans. Okay, Nazi Germans, I wrote down craft. Right after Nazi Germans, foreign, and then I wrote craft. And then I wrote down enemy lines, and I wrote down killers. Okay, killers. And there's a little bit more data there too, okay? But I think it's very important that there's some key data points, okay? And that includes the War of the Worlds and the Nazi Germans in a craft. Okay, so when I'm analyzing this data, Dennis, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, I believe there could have been, let's just say it was in the data, there could have been, I did write down balloon too, okay? Maybe there were balloons too, but I did write down basically a Nazi German craft, okay? So that would lead me to believe that they were dealing with something that the Germans sent over, okay? That would be my analysis of this data.
Yeah, that sounds right on.
It does.
Yeah. Well, here's the interesting thing. I'm thinking of this while you're talking about that. And remember, I mentioned earlier the paranormal science of the Nazis. You got to go back to the Vril, okay? And the Vril, the people who were involved with the Vril, they held seances. They supposedly contacted other worlds, not just the spirit world per se, but other worlds, alien intelligences. And supposedly these alien intelligences gave them their paranormal science. That may be your tie-in for War of the Worlds kind of thing here, okay? Because War of the Worlds talks a lot about alien intelligences. Absolutely. And they were watching us and ready to emulate the things that we did. They knew all about us. That's how the War of the Worlds began. And they decided to come and take over. But here's the interesting correlation to that is the fact that this so-called real science gets downloaded from alien intelligences and given to the Nazis. And is not some of our science to this day from the Nazis. So this has trickled down all the way down through time, through the years, to the present day society that we live in today. And I have heard so many people, Jessica, over the years say, oh, the stuff we've got now is almost like, alien technology was back engineered or something. Maybe it was. Maybe it came from the Vril. Maybe it came from, intelligent sources of alien technology that was given to the Vril to found their paranormal science. I'm going to tell you this. If you have a machine that can defy gravity, like the Bell supposedly was, or these other things like the flying wing and all that stuff, that does not look like, I have to say this, does not look like mere human intelligence. Something else is at play here, whether this information has been given by nefarious forces out there, whatever name you want to give them, whatever you want to call them. If they tapped into this intelligence, and we do know from time immemorial, and I'm not going to get into this tonight, but from way back, there have been outside agencies that have given us information, ways to wage war, and all other things that supposedly mankind has been given. It's been helped along by these outside forces, whatever name you want to give them. And I think it may be that the Nazis were tapped into some of this stuff with the Vril. And it could also be what's trickled down to us that allowed us to go to the moon.
Ooh.
In that respect.
Yeah, there was. Okay, and all of my notes, this pile of notes, there is a connection to the Apollo 11 moon landing here too, and I'll get into that when I can find. I got to dig through my notes, okay? But I totally agree with you, Dennis. Absolutely. Now I want to talk about the War of the Worlds real quick, because the War of the Worlds is one of the earliest stories to detail a conflict between humankind and an extraterrestrial race. Okay, now I've been seeing people in the chat saying that it could have been a black swan event, maybe a false flag of what they were doing. It could have, even Japan said that wasn't us, that was the United States. Okay, now how often might that happen today? Probably all the time, for all I know. I'm just saying, a lot of times your attacks come from the inside. I'm not saying it always does, but they could. It's a possibility, right? But in this case, I did pick up on Germans. Okay, so whatever, and the United States, they had an obvious response to whatever this was. It was a quick response. It was a forceful response. They were out to get whatever that was whatever was in the sky over Los Angeles. So it makes me think, okay, either this is an elaborate staged event, okay, either an elaborate staged event, or this is a real threat. I mean, we were in the middle of World War II, Dennis. Okay, that was a pretty serious war. Both of my grandfathers fought in World War II, and I know your father did. That affected a lot, most people in the United States in some way. So,
yeah, my father guarded German prisoners of war, and he talked to a few of them, and he said they were good. A lot of them were very nice people. They really did not want to fight against us. Okay, they were forced into it, a lot of them. But he said they were, and what my father told me, they were brilliant people, very smart, very intelligent people. And I think that if you were going to pick out any kind of people on this planet to give alien technology to, it would have been these people, because they could have took the ball and really run with it. You know what I'm saying? They were very, very smart there, and still are very smart and intelligent people. I remember he said they would make things out of tin cans and stuff, all kinds of stuff. Said they were just brilliant. He enjoyed talking with them, even though they were prisoners of war. Uh, he said they were fascinating people. So yeah, I think if you were going to give some people on this planet some technology, you might want to pick out the smartest people that you could find, or maybe people who could really do something with it. I would. That's the way I would operate with it. But you had some very brilliant people back then, people who were way ahead of their time in many things.
oh yeah,
Absolutely.
oh yeah. I had one of my grandfathers guarded some of the Germans as well, and he used to tell us he talked about his time he was in Italy, actually, and he talked about his time there. Constantly. That's all he ever talked about. About how he was only 16 when he went to the army. He lied about his age, and he felt so bad for those guys because they were just kids, and he was just a kid, and he would actually take harmonica out and play music for them at night, and they would just sit there and cry for their moms, cry for their mamas and stuff, and he felt bad, and he would sit there and play music to make them feel better at night and stuff. So, oh man, I'm not gonna cry, y'all. I'm not gonna cry right now. But that was, my grandfather talked about it till the day he passed away. That made a huge impact on him. Yeah, his whole life. So, anyways, all right. War is hell, as my son says. Okay, war is hell, and we don't want to. I don't want war. Okay, none of us do.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's just that this is what we're talking about tonight, and it happens. And
Oh yeah.
But yeah. Okay. So I think we can pretty much conclude with all this with the data. This is just from the data. So remote viewing data. I think it was the Germans. Okay. I think whatever they were shooting at it was from the Germans. Okay. Analyzing the data, Dennis. It was some kind of Nazi technology. Some kind of probably reverse engineered UFO or something. Because I did pick up on a craft. Okay. I picked up on a craft.
Right. So, well, I believe, I believe a lot has been hidden from us on the record of history for certain reasons. Like we've talked about Operation Paperclip and all that, and how it was also tied into super soldier projects and all that stuff. But you got to remember, supposedly too, you can't forget this, Jessica, that the Nazis, the hierarchy of the Nazis, were deep into occult practices. They were deep into some very bad, dark stuff. No matter which way you look at it, these were the hierarchy of the Nazis was one of the most evil organizations that has ever been on this planet, without a doubt. And when you have those kind of things going on, you can play whatever cards are on the table. Anything could happen with that. And I'm not gonna get into that tonight either. But you're going into some dark, nefarious type forces that you might want to be hooking up to demonic things and all this stuff. You're gonna have some very strange stuff going on. Okay, and you're gonna have some very paranormal stuff. Absolutely. And I don't put anything past some of the Nazi stuff, okay? Because, like I said, they had a paranormal science to a certain degree. To me, that leaves all the doors open. And even to this day, we talk about supposed Nazi camps in Antarctica. Supposedly there's supposed to be some still there, and the bell can still be seen supposedly there. I've actually seen supposedly in documentaries some of the launching pads for the bell that are still, you can still see. I think there are one or two left in Germany that you can still go and see. And the concrete that these things sit on was like 4 feet deep. These were like pads made for some type of a powerful instrument. Supposedly, that's how much power this thing generated. But if you could have magnetic properties that powerful in a machine, that is amazing. That is Star Trek stuff. Beyond that, you're getting into some definitely, I would have to say, alien technology, without doubt.
Yeah. Well, we've talked about it before that what we're shown is probably 50 to 100 years behind what they actually have and what our governments are using and agencies and whoever. We're not showing all the good stuff. Okay, that's like black budget, black project stuff. So that's why I like
Oh
talking
yeah.
with my buddy Jim Goodall. People that work at Skunk Works, they know what's going on. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And I think too they realize sometimes that there are certain outside forces in this world that are manipulating things. It may be starting wars, or setting peoples and nations against each other. It's almost as if
oh, yeah.
something is playing a cosmic game with us in that
Yeah.
respect. You have to wonder about that. Is not our very own history being manipulated by these forces? Yeah.
Speaking of which, this is a perfect segue because back in 1938, there was a radio show where the gentleman there actually, I guess, I don't know if it was Orson Welles. Is it his name's
Oh
Orson
yeah.
Welles, right? He actually
Yeah.
recited parts of the War of the Worlds, the book, on air. Okay, that reportedly caused panic among listeners who did not know the events were fictional. The novel even influenced the work of scientist Robert Goddard and inspired the book and helped develop both the liquid fueled rocket and multi stage rocket, which resulted in the Apollo 11 landing 71 years
Mhm.
later. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a connection to the Apollo 11. Okay, it was within the War of the Worlds. Okay, now that is a highly contested event as well. People, that's the only thing where I got a phone call. I got contacted and told to shut my mouth before I did my show on the Apollo 11 moon landing. Okay, that's a
Yeah.
touchy subject. So there's a connection
Yeah.
there. But people panicked, Dennis. They panicked because
Oh
they
yeah.
thought that the world was being invaded by Martians.
Oh yeah. They thought it was the end of the world. Yeah. Some people about trying to commit suicide.
Ooh.
They thought it was the end, and it was very, very incredibly lucky that nobody died because of this. Okay, they would have been probably put in jail for it. Definitely, they got in a lot of trouble for it. But I mean,
That's
this was something that panicked a whole nation in one night. And of course, now there is a law that if you broadcast anything like that, you have to stipulate in announcements that this is not true, this is not real. Okay, this is a made up thing. You still have to stipulate that because people could take it for being real and do some very bad things with that. But I've been sitting here thinking about all this, the manipulation we mentioned, and all that, and a lot of this. The writers that get these ideas. Where did these come from? Are we not tapped into some kind of vast universal consciousness? And
Yes.
maybe we're being given these things to prepare us for something coming down the line. I don't know. But I have to wonder about that because brilliant men like Wells and other people, not Orson Welles, but H.G. Wells, men like him who saw far into the future and things, you have to wonder where those ideas came from, because you are a product of your time and your environment. And they didn't have that thing, back in the 1800s, you didn't have that around you that much. Where did this come from? You have to wonder about that. I have to wonder if it's not some type of a universal consciousness that's feeding in these things a little bit at a time.
Oh yeah. Yeah, when I was growing up until, recently, past like 10 years or 20 years maybe, I used to think that UFOs were like so modern times, like space age UFOs. But okay, they were actually writing about, there was actually an era of time where it was very popular in literature to talk about alien invasions back in the 1800s. Okay, 1800s, that just blows my mind because I wouldn't have thought that before. Invasion literature is what they called it back in the 1800s. But if you look at old artwork, old paintings, old newspapers, even from the 1600s, the 1500s,
You'll see it in the background. You see them in the background of these paintings. Yeah. But look, I mean, go thousands of years beyond that to the book of Ezekiel in the Bible, and the things it describes in that, a wheel inside of a wheel, Jessica. That sounds very much like some type of a spacecraft. Look at that. And then now that supposedly depicts a war in the sky that day over Nuremberg. There was supposedly a battle taking place, and they said these spheres would smoke and fall out of the sky. And some of these ships that you see that look like the crosses had spheres on the ends of them, and they would shoot out light. Now, what does that sound like?
Yeah, well,
sound like lasers.
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah. Okay, Dennis, I have not told you about my data at all. I have never mentioned this to you. Okay, in this data, because I remote viewed that. Okay, and let's do a brief overview of what this is, because this is called the UFO battle over Nuremberg in Germany, 1561. I'm going to put this picture back up on the screen. I'll put the big one up, okay, while I talk about it. Okay, so on April 4th of 1561, all residents of Nuremberg, it says all residents, by the way, of Nuremberg, Germany, came out of their houses to investigate mysterious lights and sounds. They watched the sky in awe and fear as they witnessed what appeared to be some kind of air battle, and all of this in broad daylight in the early morning. The reports say it lasted about an hour, and artist Hans Glaser documented the strange event for the German Nuremberg Gazette. Describing the event, he refers to crosses, tubes, wheels, multicolored objects, and globes over the city, hundreds of them. Objects would disappear in smoke, some even crashing into the ground. The smoke was visible for miles. Now, this image has begged the explanation for centuries. What could have explained this phenomenon? Could it have been meteors or comets or other natural events? They don't think so, okay, because let me quote what he says, okay, what Glaser says, what he quoted in the Nuremberg Gazette. He says, the dreadful apparition filled the morning sky with cylindrical shapes from which emerged black, red, orange, and blue-white spheres that darted out. Between the spheres, there were crosses with the color of blood. This frightful spectacle was witnessed by numerous men and women. Afterwards, a black spear-like object appeared. The author of the Gazette warned that the God-fearing will by no means discard these signs, but will take it to heart as a warning of their merciful Father in heaven, will mend their lives and faithfully beg God that he avert his wrath, including the well-deserved punishment on us. so that we may temporarily here and perpetually there live as his children. Okay, so they put a religious spin on it, of course.
They actually believed that was a war in heaven. And I believe without a doubt that the spear, and that what you're looking at there, by the way, Jessica, is an actual woodcut by an eyewitness to it. Okay, he actually made this painting. That spear-looking thing you see at the bottom, I believe that could have been what you would term a mother ship in that respect. Yeah. And perhaps these things you see with the balls inside, the spheres inside, could have also been what you might say was something like mother ships. Because you see, if you look, you can see that some of the spheres are coming out of those cylinders. And what they describe sounds like a war. I mean, the way, but the shooting out light coming out of them, that sounds like lasers to me.
It does. Okay. Well, let me go over some of my data. Now, this data all the data is posted in my Patreon. If anybody wants to see all of it, I'm going to go over some key points. Okay. So on my analytic overlay for this target. Okay. Because I thought when I got into this target, I wrote down heaven. Okay. Heaven up high. I was seeing metallic vessels. So I wrote down metallic or metal vessel crafts, like spacecrafts, I guess. I wrote down crafts. I wrote down lasers. So lasers, WMDs. Okay, that's weapon of mass destruction. And DEW. Okay, DEWs. Y'all know what that is. Okay, directed energy weapons. Wrote down. I wrote down directed energy weapon. I heard pew pew. So I wrote down pew pew. I ended up writing, I was writing stuff like, I actually wrote down China. I don't know, maybe I thought I was in China. I wrote China, something that was foreign. I wrote down alien. I also wrote down voodoo, magic, and magical as well. Okay, so however that pertains to this. But I was experiencing explosions. Something that was illegal. I wrote down sky god or sky gods, star gods, sky gods. I wrote down Anunnaki, reptilian, ETs, and a universal race is what I wrote down for that target. There's more data there, but those are like the key data points that pertain to this target, actually. Okay. So I don't know if it actually, I wrote down Anunnaki and stuff. So Dennis, that was actually part of the data. So, but it's interesting because this is not the only war in the sky, like UFO battle in the sky from history, because we also have, see if I have it here. We also have this one. Okay, now this is called the the air battle of Stralsund. Okay, so this is in Stralsund, wherever Stralsund is. I guess that's in Europe. Excuse me. It says in April of 1665, 6 fishermen witnessed an unexplained celestial phenomenon, an aerial battle in the skies above the Baltic Sea near Stralsund. Those look
like look very much like huge water cannons.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. It says,
that's some more spheres. That's more spheres that you hear about, and these have also been reported in ancient times by the Chinese and Japanese. Supposedly the dynasties talk about some of these things. I think this may have been a cosmic war that sort of overlapped and came over Earth maybe for a while. I think there was something very similar to this. It had very much like, I'd see the people who were very religious in those days looked upon this as very much like war in heaven that you read about in the Bible kind of thing. But yet I find it very strange that these are like craft looking things that they're talking about. Actually, and as you and I both know, UFOs were supposedly unknown back then. Nobody knew anything like that, or anything could fly like that. And the only things they could see that fly in the sky were birds and bees and stuff like that. It's amazing to think about that these things would be seen and talked about and recorded in that respect. There was something out of the ordinary definitely going on here.
Yeah, well, even the Cherokee, here in the United States, Native American indigenous people. I spent some time up in near Cashiers, North Carolina, near the Cherokee Reservation up there, with some of my Cherokee friends, and we went to Judaculla Rock, and that is a gigantic petroglyph. Okay, it's a big gigantic rock with petroglyphs on it. And Chief David was saying that actually it tells the story of the Star People. It's almost like Star Wars and stuff, and how the beginning of the history and how they ended up coming here to Earth and stuff. So there had been Star Wars going on for some time. I mean, my goodness, we have a full series of movies called Star Wars, right? So it's kind of like in our faces. Okay. But I think that we've had a lot of Star Wars for a long time. I mean, now we even have something called Space Force here in the United States, Dennis. Okay. Yeah. They're not hiding it.
Well, I think mankind will take his war into space. They're doing it already. I think a lot, we knew all about this, the secret stuff that the Space Force is doing and all these other things. They are going to eventually take it into space. There's no doubt about that. That might be the next battlefield. Absolutely. Especially with all of the satellites and hardware that they've got up there. I don't see them bypassing that at all. But when looking back on things like this that have happened in the past, you have to wonder, though, if maybe, we just happened to be in the neighborhood of a big battle that was going on. We just happened to be there, to see to eyewitness a little bit of it, of something that was going on amongst the stars. That's the feeling I get when I hear these reports and see these woodcuts and stuff like that. I have to wonder that maybe, we just happen to be in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we're just, I mean, could you imagine being a person back in those days? I mean, first of all, history is not what we've been taught. Okay, so we've got to set the tone with that. History is not what we're taught. We're taught there probably wasn't a lot of electricity and stuff. People were living in the dark ages. But now I'm learning that they had like free energy and all sorts of, probably had lights all over the place when we were told that there were just campfires and candles and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like we're so low tech today compared to what things used to be, potentially. Okay, so it's hard to really talk about all this. I mean, we talk about things based on what we've been taught in school. Okay, but I think that we have to bust out of that at this point, and we can't talk about. It's just harder to talk about everything because I think things were different than what we've been taught. God, did that make any sense? I feel like I'm talking in circles.
Well, every age takes it from its perspective. Just like those people thought that was a religious, angelic thing, maybe it was going on. Every age takes it from their own perspective. We are products of our environment and of our time and our history. I've studied a lot of anthropology in my time and a lot of the belief systems of the world. And almost every belief system where there is a cadre of gods that people believe in, where do they always say they come from, Jessica? From the sky.
The stars.
It goes with the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Eskimos, the Native Americans across the globe. The belief is that we have some kind of strange connection with the sky.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, without a doubt.
I think a lot of us in here in this chat, I think we're from the stars. Okay. I think a lot of people are from the stars. I think most of us probably are from the stars. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I believe we're star children to a certain extent in that respect. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do too. Well, nonetheless, okay, these in that data for this event that happened in 1561, they have directed energy weapons. Okay. Directed energy weapons of mass destruction, all the stuff that we have today, they had back then. Okay, this was 1561, Dennis, and that was and maybe it was just the way I was interpreting what I was seeing, but I picked up on lasers. Okay, lasers, and you had said lasers before I even read my data off, so you didn't even know what I was going to say. Interesting.
I think a lot of our modern day technology we got from Nazi Germany, absolutely, And like I say, I always like to go back and explore the origins of anything, whatever it may be. And I wanted to see what the origins of Nazi Germany's technology was. And that's where I went back to the Vril and what its origin was. And you keep go back and back and back and back, further back. You get into some weird, very strange stuff. I'm not going to say it's demonic, but it's very dark kind of stuff. It's very occultic type stuff that you see these people are hooked up into. You have to wonder, like I said earlier, about some of these outside forces manipulating us, feeding us things, giving us things they want us to have, so that they can twist and turn us in the way they want us to go, to manipulate our history and us, basically. And we have to wonder sometimes, I think, Jessica, how much control we're really under by these things. How much is hidden from us for a reason. You don't just hide something for no reason. And I said this the other night on my show. You cannot have a government without secrets. That's just the way that goes. And I think a lot of those secrets are being held back from us. Probably sometimes it might be for our own good, but most of the time I don't think it is. That's just the way I look at it. But I think a lot of that's being kept back from us, and there's a lot of history, just like the Battle of Los Angeles and all that, that has been manipulated and been hidden from us for reasons. Maybe one day we'll find out for sure what really happened, but until then, we're stuck with their narrative and not ours.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we get their narrative, but then I get these really cool targets that people send me. Okay, and that I get tasked with, and so I can get some remote viewing data on stuff, and we can have discussions about it. And I know remote viewing is not the end all be all. Okay, but it is interesting that the data lines up with what these things actually are. Okay, it always blows my mind.
That's amazing.
But I was picking up on lasers. Okay, lasers and DEWs and WMDs. And unfortunately, we do get, so I get suspicious of things like what I looked into with the Battle of Los Angeles. Yeah, I do think there are a lot of staged events, and that was in the data, something that was staged too. So staged events to put us into wars and to lose countless lives, like sacrifices or something. You know, it's horrible, the things that we do, it's that our government does. Okay, but also some people were saying, when I was doing some research today, they said, well, people were suspicious that this was something that was staged to get us into war, to create that big old military industrial complex, you know, we got here in the United States today. And so I think that could have been the case too. Okay, I think that lines up with some of the data.
Yeah. But that's the very thing that Eisenhower warned us about, the military industrial complex. And I think it does. And you know, the interesting thing about bureaucrats, they're not elected. They're not elected officials. So they have I think, sort of a free hand in a lot of things they do. And that's what makes them kind of dangerous in my book. But once again, your remote viewing has been impressive. You have really tagged some interesting stuff here. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, I love doing this. I don't know. I mean, lasers in the 1500s, that doesn't make any sense. Not from what we've been taught. Lasers. That's like space age stuff. That's brand new. We haven't had lasers for that long. Actually, I guess we have. Okay. So, yeah. Susan says humans contain stardust. I think, yeah, we all come from the stars and then we go back as stars, I guess. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right?
Once upon a time in our history, the only thing that could equal a laser would have been a bolt of lightning. That was it. Yeah. That was the only thing you could think about that would have that much power back in the old days, especially. I think about Zeus and his thunderbolts, you know, kind of a thing. Only the gods had power like that, supposedly. And that's what makes things like that interesting, to actually allude to something like lasers, spaceships, things that they would have known nothing about or had any knowledge about. And yet, here it is, recorded, you know?
Yes. And yeah, and so there's also the connection to like Antarctica too. And JoJo Awaken is saying they have found pyramids in Antarctica. Yeah, they're pyramids all over the earth. There's pyramids everywhere. It's we have to start questioning our history, what we've been taught, and find out why they're hiding all this from us. Okay, why are they hiding all this secret knowledge and our true history from us? So I don't know. Just stay tuned to our channels. We're trying to uncover some of this stuff. We're working on it. Okay.
I've said that before, Jessica. If we were to find out the true history of this world, we might be amazed.
That's right.
We would definitely, I think, be surprised.
Yeah. Yes. I think it's Mr. B. Okay, but J. Truseeker. Okay, the Germans' Antarctica base was called New Schwabenland, and they also had a hidden base in Brazil too. Yes. Yeah. I've talked about I thought it was New Schwabenland or New Schwabenland. You gotta wonder, like,
Swabia was part of the Black Forest in Germany. A lot of strange things went on there. Werewolves, vampires were a big place for them, actually. So Swabia, I can see why they would name it New Swabia land. Yeah.
Oh wow. Well, you gotta wonder. There's so many anomalies going on in Antarctica too, and why do the heads of state want to go down there and visit? I mean, what are they hiding? Okay, because we don't know people can't go down there. They won't allow us to go down there. Right?
I've always speculated that, Jessica. There have been rumors, it seems like forever, even before World War II and all that there was an alien thing, some kind of alien connection with Antarctica and the Arctic too. Take a look at some of the horror movies that came out back in, let's say, the 40s, 50s. They talk about aliens landing in Antarctica and Arctic, in the Arctic Circle and all that. Why? There's a tie-in to that. And if I were going to have a secret base, that'd be where I would go, definitely, because you could really have a secret base there. Nobody's going to bother you.
No, I mean, normal everyday people are just not allowed to go to Antarctica, and some people say, well, maybe there's the ice wall and there's lands beyond the ice wall and stuff. That's a whole other conversation. Okay, that's a whole. I think I've covered that before. When Jan and Gerald came on the show, we talked about the potential of there being a flat Earth. Okay, there's a potential. We're not saying there is. We're just looking into it, right? That was the most controversial show I've ever done, by the way. Okay, I still have people commenting on that on my social media to this day.
Here's an interesting tie into that, Jessica. Okay, now I'm just saying some supposition here. Okay, but supposedly Antarctica is the last remnant of a civilization that existed before the civilizations of the world ever became what they were. In other words, millions of years ago, this civilization existed. And it may have had alien tie-ins to it, but it was supposed to be so far advanced that eventually, somehow or another, they destroyed themselves. And only remnants of this past civilization, this great unknown and forgotten civilization, still exists in certain parts of the world, especially the largest remnant of it remains in the Antarctica behind the ice wall.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm with Digger Dog. It's way past time for the human race to put on our big boy and big girl pants and quit lying and hiding the truth. Okay. I agree with that. I think most of us can handle it, man. I really do. But there's a lot of people who are so asleep to everything. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't tell us, though. Who cares? We're ready. And I mean, I'm begging for the truth. I beg for it, but then I know we're not going to get it, so we got to find it for ourselves, I guess. So, but yeah, lots of pyramids all over the world, y'all. Lots of pyramids. We actually have some, like, is it Aztec ruins? There's like a pyramid here in Georgia, in a place called Track Rock Gap. Okay, and it's like, yeah, it's hard to get to it, but I know where it's at.
It was something my grandmother used to tell me, Jessica, many years ago. Never tell everything you know, because then they'll know everything you know and what they know too. And that is the way these governments operate. Okay, that's the way this world is set up. They're never going to share their secrets with us, because then they would have to share their power. and they're not going to do that if they can help it. So if we get the secrets, we're going to have to work for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You said the word. It's power, it's control. Power and control. That's why we're not getting any of this information. Okay, we don't get the real deal. That's why our school textbooks are, it's history, it's somebody's story, okay, but it's not the full story. It's not the full story.
Right.
So we got to be free thinkers, okay, free thinkers here. So yeah.
But no matter how you look at it, Jessica, these people that hold back this stuff, they're not friends of the truth. They're enemies of the truth. And it's good that we have shows like this one and others out there that try to uncover some of this truth. That they want to keep hidden from us, because so therein lies their power and their control over us. We've got to remember that. But we need to keep looking for the truth, because these are enemies of the truth. We want to be friends of the truth. We want to be people that stand up for the truth. But the enemies of the truth are my enemies too. That's the way that goes. Yeah. Absolutely.
For sure. I didn't even notice I've got super stickers in here tonight. Thank you guys. Candy, thank you so much for that super sticker. I appreciate you so much. And also Long Island Bigfoot, man, thank you so much for being here. I've seen you in that chat tonight too. So many great people in here. I can't see what that is, but to you all. So thank you. Shout outs, everybody. It's from Long Island Bigfoot. Thank you, Mike. We appreciate you. And you and Candy. So thank you all so much. Yeah, I don't like to think I have a lot of enemies. I have a lot of people who claim to be my enemies now, and that's fine. They can pretend to be my enemies. I don't like I have a lot of, I try to have enemies, okay, because I try to like everybody, all right. But yeah, people who want to cover up the truth, that's not cool. That's not cool at all. And it's for control purposes. It's gatekeepers, right? Is that what you call them? Gatekeepers? That's not cool. It's not cool.
No, never is.
Yeah.
And that's I've told people a lot of times. Of course, that's what the word occult means: hidden truth, hidden knowledge. But I'm sort of in the school where I like to share the knowledge. I want the knowledge out there. That's the way I look at it. That's just my own personal thing that's slant on it. But some people don't feel that way. Some people in power definitely don't feel that way.
Yeah. Donna, hey Donna, she asked, as far as we know, are these bases still active? Like everything else, they are hidden. Yeah, I think a lot of these bases are active. Otherwise, why would like John Kerry and Buzz Aldrin have not gone down to Antarctica the past, what was that, a couple of years ago? I think Buzz had a heart attack down there, didn't he? Something. So yeah, there's some kind of bases, I would assume. I'm not saying they're all German bases, okay, but there's some kind of base down there. I would assume the United States has a few bases, right?
Oh yeah, a lot of this technology would still also probably be tied to some type of portal activity, definitely, and that might account for a lot of the missing ships and airplanes and stuff. If these portals are turned on or off at certain times or whatever, and that's why it may be also why. You're not allowed to fly over the Antarctic. That's a big taboo there. There are a lot of international agreements that keep you from flying over the Antarctic. Why is that? You have to wonder.
Well, Admiral Byrd, didn't he say Project High Jump? Said there's an entrance to inner Earth there, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's why.
Could be.
Yeah. Could be.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting comment there from Jay Trueseeker. Apparently, the USA made an attempt to nuke New Schwabenland back in 1958.
I've heard that. I've heard of that, supposedly. They were supposed to have been a war, like some war engagement with those bases, and we lost, actually, in the battle itself. And it says Admiral Byrd narrates a really interesting ecosystem while flying to the Antarctic. Yeah, there are things down there that we don't know about, and they're keeping them from us for a reason. I've actually supposedly seen pictures now. Like I say, I can't tell you this for sure is real because I wasn't there when the picture was taken. But I have seen pictures supposedly of the remnants of these civilizations that supposedly existed in the Arctic. Back, I think, like a million some odd years ago, the Antarctic was a paradise. It was a jungle. It was not like what you see now. It was a completely different. The world we see today, Jessica, is not the world, the antediluvian world that once existed on this planet. We're in the latter stages of that. It was covered once with glaciers, and before that, it was covered with jungles. How many times have civilizations risen and fallen on this planet that we never know about? And a lot of that is still buried. Maybe one day we'll dig some of it up. You never know. But I think the giants had played a big part in that too as well. I think there were certain species of things on this planet that were bigger, better than they are. It seems like as the age of this planet, this world goes on, things get weaker, but yet wiser in some ways. But it weaker, smaller. It sort of trickles down from what it once was. You have to wonder what's going on with that too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a mysterious world, Dennis. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems as though I don't know. I want to say pole shifts and stuff. Okay, pole shift. That's something that I need to look into. I think maybe do a show on. Okay, pole shifts. Just the climates are different. The Earth is different. The Earth is alive. It changes all the time, and that explains a lot of this. Okay, explains a lot of things being frozen now. It used to be jungles and stuff like that. But then we get into the topic of inner Earth and like the opening up down there in Antarctica. And I would love to hear. I have a Facebook friend whose father was actually part of Project High Jump. And I would love to bring him on the show sometime. I don't know if he'll come on the show. I think his father's passed away now, but he had some pretty good stories, I'm sure. And if I can get my buddy to come on the show one day, I would love that, to hear some of the stories from some of the guys who were part of Project High Jump. Okay. I have not seen anybody talk about that too often. Okay. I haven't tuned into it, I guess, but that would be an interesting show, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and when you go back into history and look at things, folklore, stories, tales, and all that, you got a lot of clues of these things in there, and I think if we pay attention to those clues, they give us a better picture of the things that happened and went on. Just like the Battle of L.A., there's a lot of clues in it, and if you put the pieces together, you come out with a better answer on it. That's what you have to do in research. That's why it's called research. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. I've been doing so much research lately, and that's all I did today. I actually went on. Heidi has been in the chat. Heidi Pop was in here, and me and Barry went on her show today. And after we cut from that show, I sat here in this chair all day researching for the show tonight. Okay, all day. I have barely gotten up today to do anything because this is a very important topic, I think, that we're looking into today, Dennis, because I'm not going to say it changes our history in any ways, but it kind of opens it up to more possibilities as to what our history was. Okay, just opens it up. It doesn't change anything, but it can change our perspective on it. So it does change something. Yep. And perspective is everything. Okay, perspective.
It's always fascinating to me to solve the mystery of history.
Yeah, me too. And you're the best, one of the best people to do this with tonight, because you have so much knowledge, and I knew that we'd have a good time tonight talking about this. I think we've covered it pretty well, and I'm sure there are many more UFO battles that happened in the sky throughout history from the beginning of time. And there's even tapestries that have UFOs in them, depicting, like, even on Jesus on the cross there's a painting of that, or a tapestry where there's a UFO behind him. I mean, there's all sorts of UFOs throughout history. If you just look in some of the old, like, Renaissance paintings and stuff. So
yeah,
I
agree.
I know. Well,
absolutely.
Dennis, do you have any final thoughts on all this tonight? I think we covered everything pretty well tonight.
Well, like I said before, I just don't think we're being told everything we need to know, and there's reasons why they're holding back on a lot of things. But if we are very astute and read between the lines, really search through the accounts and all that, we can get a little bit better, clearer picture of what's being kept from us, by the way. But I think something happened that night, definitely, in the Battle of L.A. What precipitated that? I know it was a lot of war, jittery nerves, and all that going on, and I can see why the mindset was already prepared for that. But something set it off. Something had to be the trigger, and that is the big question. What was it? That still exists. And I kind of go along with your remote viewing on that. I have just a suspicion that Germany somehow was involved in that. Definitely.
Yeah. According to the data, Germany had some involvement in the Battle of LA. I think it was a German ship that they were shooting at. I 100% do. It's in the data. And that's just according to the data. Okay. According to the data, it seems as though there was some sort of a ship, a vessel that belonged to Germany. Okay. And that's what this is right here for anybody who missed it. If anybody came in late, I think that's what they're shooting at. Okay.
Yep.
I think that's what they're shooting at. It's something, it belongs to Germany, or it was made by Germany. It had something to do with Germans. Okay. Now, that's just from the data. Like I said, y'all take it with a grain of salt. It's remote viewing data. Okay. But I think a lot of these targets that I get, I think the data is on target with a lot of these targets. Okay. So anyways, we learned a lot tonight, Dennis. I learned a lot from you tonight, by the way. So thank you so much for being here. And I know the audience did too. So Dennis, can you please tell the audience where they can find you and all your amazing shows that you're doing?
Okay, well, I have 3 podcasts going on. I have Monday nights at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my good friend Gerald Fountain. We travel down the road less traveled, and that's on Monday nights. On Wednesday night, I have Hunting the Shadows at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and this next Wednesday coming up, I'll be doing my special 2-hour seminar. Wednesday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's on the Nephilim, the rise of the fallen. It's going to be very interesting. And this Friday, tomorrow night, at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to have an open discussion night. So join us if you can, Jessica. We all going to bring some questions and sit around and just talk.
Oh, yeah.
And
I always do.
make some observations. Yeah.
Well, I love it. You have a great chat room in there too, and a lot of people who are in this chat right now are in your chats too. So I love it, and yeah, and like I said, I always learn something from you, Dennis. So thank you so very much for being here. Okay, and I want to thank everybody. Oh, and by the way, Dennis is an author and has books, so you guys go to his website, DennisWCarroll.com, to get information about Dennis, and you can find his books as well. Okay, and and I want you guys to please come back and see me Saturday night. I will be on the hunt. I don't remember. I don't think I've booked a guest yet. Okay, so but y'all come back. I promise you, it's going to be a fantastic show. It always is on Saturday night, and then I'll be at Spaced Out Radio on Sunday. Okay, so y'all please come see me, and let's have some more fun. Okay, over here we're gonna solve the mysteries of the world together, hopefully. And Dennis, we'll see you tomorrow night over on your channel. All right, everybody. Y'all have a wonderful night, and thank y'all so much for being here. And thank you for the super stickers, and just thank you for all your support from Dennis and I both. Okay, y'all have a great night. Dennis, have a great night, and I will see y'all. We'll see y'all tomorrow night in your chat room, Dennis. Bye, y'all.